Welcome back. We now move on to the next segment where we get to have a quick look at what the papers have for us today. I start you off with the Daily Nation. The bigger part of the front page still focusing on the post KCPE results analysis. They've gone on to give on their own analysis from the first page up until the 13th page of this particular daily. But an interesting part is this particular area concerning the interesting phenomena that is twins who have been actually scoring either the exact marks or a difference of not more than 5 marks. They've highlighted that particular piece. But for the biggest part, they go on to even compare private schools as well as public schools, in as much as NEC stopped doing that. So NEC just gives out the results based on the top performance, not comparing the schools. But this particular daily has gone on to actually have the main read being private schools top county KCPE chats. Away from matters education, Raila denies plotting Uhuru impeachment. Now, ODM leader refutes claims by Deputy President William Ruto that it was actually he and not the DP who wanted to kick out the president. And he spoke about this I believe it was yesterday, where he rubbished the DP's allegations, insisting that he was not aware of his impeachment claims that he made recently. But on the flip side, we did see the DP say, and I quote, as per what has been captured on this daily, "I am not a fool, a drunkard, or a madman to help put together a government and then go behind and plan to remove it. As a deputy president, I know what I must do, and I will never, I have never, and it has never happened that I will do anything to bring down our government." That is just what has been captured here briefly. Away from politics, onto some business, is that KQ has the losses post-COVID-19 recovery, and this is comparing the losses that it made in 2020 and 2021. Looking at 2020, they made losses of 36.2 billion, but in 2021, those losses came down to 15.8 billion. This is something that has been seen to be, of course, there are losses, but looking at the struggles that the national carrier has been experiencing, this is definitely well in line with the recovery process. That is the front page of the Daily Nation for you this morning. Victor.
Maybe just to ask Regina from the business desk, this is some good news for the national carrier. The bailout has been in the process for so many years up to now.
Yes. Pardon?
Regina.
The national, are you talking about the restructure? What are you talking about?
The issue of KQ, they are making some progress in terms of the profit. For now, things are looking up pretty well.
Well, you can say this is progress, but they're still in the loss making. What they're doing is that they're reducing their losses. So they're working up to get back to profitability. Remember, the national carrier, there's been lots of proposals to actually bring it back to profitability, including, nationalization of this particular carrier now, where the taxpayer will fully be bailing it out. And there's been talk about how much it will get actually in this year's budget, or rather what I'm talking about, the 2022-2023 budget. That's some of one of the parastatals that we will be looking to see what budgetary allocation it is going to get. But yes, Victor, this is some sort of improvement in as far as the national carrier is concerned. And there's also been talk, about how well is the national carrier paying its pilots. Local pilots have been saying that expatriates are getting more pay or earning better, and this has been a subject of conversation way back when, like 10 years back, when the national carrier began its restructuring, cutting down, and even it had to sell some of its aircrafts to just return to profitability. So this is a step in the right direction. We just hope that it is going to break even sooner than later.
Good news. Sometimes we talk business. Let's talk politics, shall we? On the front page of the Star here is a bit different. How thick a man boiled to death, only tooth left. Otieno's glove snagged, and he was dragged into furnace of molten steel moments before his 50 shillings ugali lunch arrived.
What's that last part of that?
His 50 shillings ugali lunch arrived, because the story is that he had just ordered for his lunch, because they work in shifts, and another gentleman, but he ordered for his lunch. So before his meal arrived, when they came back, they didn't find him. They only saw some signs of him, the turbines. So it got snapped, and he was dragged into the machine, and that was it. So the story says that even his colleagues were now wondering what to do with the food that he had just ordered for his lunch. So the family are now planning to have a coffin, to do a ritual, and just to bury the body in Kisumu. And what they will bury is just some ashes and a tooth. We're just having a story here with Jane, because when you look at the temperature that is used to melt steel at a rolling plant, you can imagine the temperatures. Mm-hmm. And here, it's just flesh, blood, and bones. So sad. May the family find grace. Okay, MCAs earn 650 shillings in sitting allowances in 3 months. Servant leaders disregard ceilings set by the SRC to pocket handsome allowances. Now, the story says that some MPs actually took home as much as 209,000 shillings per month in sitting allowances alone. The SRC has set monthly limit of 124. Now, according to the report, Migori, Busia, Kisii, and Nyamira, who actually greatly exceeded their limits, the report shows that each of the 37 MCAs in Nyamira County pocketed an average of 137,000 shillings, 144 in sitting allowances alone per month. It also shows that each of the 57 MCAs in Migori spent an average of 209,000 shillings per month sitting allowance. Now, this is added to basic salary. Other allowances, the Migori MCAs took home 450,000 shillings per month.
On average? On
average, on sitting allowance. So the MCAs are supposed to earn 165,000 shillings per month, airtime allowance of 5,000 bob, sitting allowance of 5,000 shillings, and mileage allowance of 3,980. Yes. Anxious wait for Uhuru, Raila, Ruto ahead of BBI ruling. That is tomorrow. 7 issues to be determined by the Supreme Court. One of them, actually, which was also illustrated here, whether basic structure doctrine applies in Kenya, whether the president can initiate a popular initiative law review. The third one is whether the president can be sued in his personal capacity. The fourth one is whether the IBC was legally constituted when it proceeded to when it processed actually the BBI bill. The fifth one is whether the proposed 70 new constituencies are legal. The sixth one is the threshold of public participation and whether the BBI process complied. The last one is whether a referendum ballot paper with multiple issues should contain one or multiple questions. That is something that will be handled tomorrow. Remember that the Supreme Court will be delivering that verdict tomorrow. Doreen.
Right, it's the nomination headache amongst parties. In fact, the main head this morning on the PD, ODM fights back as nomination fallout escalates. And as mentioned, they have given direct nominations to some candidates, and this is particularly single candidates in a variety of areas. But this looks not to be sitting well with some members also seeing that some have defected to various other parties because of that. But again, when it comes to the issue of nomination, there's quite a lot to be talked about on this specific issue. Of course, when it comes to particularly direct ticketing, it begs the question, where does it leave the will of the people? But then again, parties are coming to strongly say that there's also a lot that entails when it comes to nomination in terms of resources, of course, finances, as well as human resource that is needed even for this exercise. This is even as the ODM nominations are slated to begin this Friday. To some bit of education matters now after
the release of the exam results on Monday. Right now, the Form 1 selection is underway, as mentioned by the Cabinet Secretary Education, that is George Magohan. He says that this process is expected to be completed in 2 weeks, and also top schools are set to admit over 30,000 people. So that is what is coming out there on some education matters now. And just as it was mentioned there concerning the BBI, is that will the Uhuru Raila Building Bridges Initiative dream come to fruition, even as we await that ruling from the Supreme Court, that bench judge, which is expected to deliver this verdict. You can remember that last year during the Jamhuri Day celebrations, the president said that the BBI is just a dream deferred. One day, someday, it will happen. But even at that, still willing and ready to accept whatever verdict is going to be given. But we cannot forget the fact that whichever way it goes, it will definitely have a huge impact and bearing on the August 9th general elections. And lastly, history as parties enlist 24 million ahead of the nominations. We obviously had the story this morning on the GMK News Brief, but just to give you a bit of a breakdown on that nomination, is that 15 million were males in respect to that enlisting that was given to the ORPP, and 8.6 are female, which form that 24 million persons who were enlisted in that nomination process. Ray.
I have a copy of the Standard with me this morning, and it's all about, just looking at, the aftermath of the KCPE results here. And various students have been captured on the front page here, talking about, where they studied, what they scored, and what they aspire to be. Some of the professions that have been named here, unfortunately, I don't see journalism. I don't know what that says about us, but hey, top student, that is Magata Bruce. He wants to study robotics engineering, while Ashley Momanyi wants to study space science. Joel Njero, on the other hand, wants to study law. We have medicine, space science, medicine, electrical engineering, or aeronautical engineering, neurosurgery, cardiology, medicine, and neurosurgery. The beginning of dreams. Actually, the scribe here has gone with dreams of KCPE stars, or rather stars. This is what they want to go study. The main read actually cuts across from page 1 all the way to page 5, with Jane, that story about twins and how they performed in this particular exam. Some of their hopes are bent on, joining the same secondary school. And well, in as much as they want to join the same secondary school, remember, it may not happen. We also have a set of triplets who actually scored very interesting marks in this particular examination. I want to get that tweet here. And it reads that we have 3. Actually, they studied in the same school, and they're twins in the same class, actually. And this is what they scored. Abadnego Solonka scored 412 marks, Shadrach Solonka 408, Meshach Solonka 401. Triplets, same scoreline, and they all hope to attend the same secondary school.
You know what, Regina?
Yes?
Somebody said that it's not a coincidence, because when you have twins going to the same school, same class, they study almost same books, do the same assignment, their reasoning almost becomes the same. Because when they do their revisions back at home, they sit on the same desk. So you can imagine what I'm doing and how I'm going to solve that problem is exactly what Jenny is going to solve. So when we go to an exam room, we almost think the same.
Now, Victor, twins, how are twins formed? Let's get back to biology.
Yes.
It's actually when you have identical twins, and Jane, you can chip in onto this as well as Doreen. Correct me if my biology is off. Let's go. For twins to actually occur, they're either fraternal or identical twins. Yes. So identical twins is a split of a zygote.
Very well.
Yeah. A zygote. So in essence, this was meant to be one child, right? But it splits, and that's why you have two identical twins. Then there's the fraternal, where do we say eggs?
Yes, they're called matube.
Yes, are fertilized at the same time. 2 eggs are fertilized by different sperms at the same time. That's what happens when you're having fraternal twins. So in the case for identical twins, I tend to think because this was meant to be one person in essence, and this you'll find that even when we have these identical twins, they complete each other's sentences. But coming from a family of twins, where ours are fraternal, they are very competitive, but you cannot say they're one person per se, because one is male, the other one is female. But the only time you actually see them coming together is when one of them is facing a challenge. That's when you actually see the other coming in to support them. But this issue of twins, Victor, not necessarily because they study the same and do the same thing, but it's because, you know,
biology.
Yes, biology, especially when it comes to, you know, identical twins, because
it's
in as far as biology is concerned, this was meant to be one person. Correct me if I'm wrong.
but still, external forces also contribute to that.
Really?
Right? Science plays a key role.
Would you really attribute it to external forces? I mean, sometimes you've seen identical twins who even their personalities are different. How they do things is different. So I think it's just really restricted to biology. But also I think this is that year that we've seen good number of twins getting similar, I mean, the same marks.
Let's call it.
There's also an article here on the same twins who beat COVID to just get the same marks. I think that was in which county? Haven't quite specified, but I mean, they are really identical twins. And actually, because of the ravaging effects of COVID-19, they had to change schools. So it means that they were in different schools. But even at that, they still got the same marks, exact same marks, and they were not in the same space.
Talking about the performance of, you know, students in this, you know, the KCP, we have an article here that has highlighted some of, you know, the students that really went through thick and thin, lots of challenges, including, you know, hospitalization, brain surgery, loss of parents, and they managed to actually score impressive marks. One of them happens to be Alan Wainaina from King's Academy, Nakuru, who scored 400 marks despite losing the father to a heart attack in April 2017 and his mother to lung cancer in August 2021. And also, we have, you know, Moi Primary School that had 2 special needs pupils. One is Oscar Ochieng and Louis Karanja, who both scored 120 and 127 marks respectively. One of the kids had a problem with their memory, could not remember what they had learned minutes or hours before, and this is after they had to undergo surgery after getting involved in an accident that affected his functioning. Well, I tend to think all of the students who went through this particular examination, this is not the end actually, because if we were all to be honest, some of us scored quite, you know, some grades, but hey,
you want to go there?
yeah, you know, we scored quite something, but that doesn't mean it stopped us from, you know, achieving the dreams that we've had. So it's not the end of the road, because I remember there was a push and pull back then. I sat in the 844 system. I think we were the ones who were ushering, or rather putting a cap to the new system, dropping off courses and such. And there was a lot of, you know, clamor. You have to, back then, our exam was out of 500 marks. So when I convert what I got then, and the school it got me to attend in as far as my KCSE is concerned, I'm like, hey, God, you were faithful, you know.
God only come through.
Oh, yes. So I think we need to encourage all the students who sat for the examination that, you know, and as far as your dreams are valid, no one has a bigger dream than the other, and your qualification in primary doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end of the road. You know,
now, before we get to close this particular conversation around KCPE and twins, the twins that have been featured here are 2 girls who had 405 and 406 marks. The other set of twins had 418 and 412 marks. And I've just Googled this whole phenomenon around twins. And actually, it's something that has been researched. When it comes to the IQ of identical twins, it is almost always the same, regardless of the environment that they grew up in. And even looking at some abilities, and especially when it comes to musical talents, twins can be put in extremely separate environments, but when it comes to musical talents, they will sort of present the same level of skill. So it's very heavily based on the genetics. Because essentially, as I said, Regina, then this is for identical twins, they were meant to be one individual. And it is one egg that's split into two or more. We know of more multiple pregnancies. So in the case where it is one zygote that's split into many others, they're going to have the same, almost the same intellectual abilities and skills that they will be presenting much later in life. So this clearly explains in the cases where we are seeing identical twins actually scoring, if not the same, close to each other, the marks that they scored in these particular exams.
Victor, would you want to have a twin? Would you have wanted to have a twin?
It's about God. It's not about God, it's not about me.
What?
I don't know why Victor answers questions like that. As in, it's just so direct.
Exactly. It's about God, it's not about me.
No, I'll just ask you, would you have wanted to have a twin? If you were given a choice?
Pass.
Pass. Okay, Jane, would you?
Yes.
Identical?
In one or the other, I have an Irish twin.
You have an Irish twin?
Yes.
Doreen, would you have wanted to be a twin?
No. I'm just I'm okay.
Oh, wow.
And I thank God. I'm good.
You want to be the only version of you.
What about you, Regina?
I would want to have a twin.
It would be interesting.
It would be interesting.
Very
and I actually
interesting.
would have wanted to be a twin where we are identical twins. Because I grew up reading this book, Sweet Valley High. You know, we had an Elizabeth, and I can't remember the other twin, and they were always up into some mischief, you know, and they usually got away with it because no one could tell them apart. So from that cheeky aspect, well, I would have loved to be a twin. Now we move away from matters of, you know, twins and performances. Top stories that are making headlines across the globe, and according to this particular paper, is that story that we have highlighted for you now. DRC is firmly a member of EAC. That's the East African Community. But who gains? Now, according to this particular article, there are lots of gains to be experienced from the EAC joining. DRC joining the EAC, given that DRC had applied to join the EAC back in 2019. Now this will allow the Congolese citizens to travel freely to other countries, and trade is expected to be much quicker, simpler and cheaper, which should benefit businesses and consumers in all countries. However, there is an issue of, the issue of integration. We are still working at having a smooth integration across the East African community. And the fact that, the DRC brings in quite the market, that's a population of around 90 million people, expanding the EAC to a trading bloc of 300 million people. Now, it has been termed as huge and a chaotic country compared to the rest of the members of the EAC. Then also looking at the country's somewhat poor infrastructure and insecurity are definitely going to be a matter of concern for partner states. And these are words of Damali Sassali, a trade expert. Well, we're beginning looking at that. Doreen.
Before actually, Doreen, you jump in on that, there's a caricature here that has been featured on the Daily Nation concerning that whole story of a DRC joining the East African Community, and they put it in the form of a Zoom meeting. All right? So it's a Zoom meeting with some of the leaders, the presidents of the East African Community countries, and there's the leader of DRC with a pot of gold. amekuja na pot of gold. He comes bearing gifts. So yeye ndio anakaribishwa, and His Excellency caricature that resembles the President of Kenya says, kindly join the meeting. Okay. So again, as you said, so much is being questioned at what they're going to bring onto the table. But again, let's wait and see, you know.
But you know, DRC is a land of minerals. I mean, they're the one that produce cobalt, which is used for, is it making phones? I think so. And so clearly when it comes to such things as that, and even going by that caricature, they could really be having a lot to bring to the table, aside from the market that they bring over 90 million population to the block, because that looks like what is really being talked about so much. Anyway, so let's come to, again, one of those main reads this morning, and this in respect to the primaries as well as the nominations slated to happen amongst different parties, and also that which will keenly taking place from April of 16th, particularly for ODM, set to begin this Friday, that is on the 1st. But this particular party, right now, actually, as of last evening, fighting an emerging storm within the ranks after handing out of direct tickets to dozens of members. And also some of these members have been written down here. Key among them include former Garissa governor, who is seeking to recapture that seat of governorship, aspirant Baraza of Kakamega, Hamadi of Kwale, Tindi of Butere, Titus Hamala of Lurambi, Peter Nabulindo, there's Christopher Aseka of Huisero, Emmanuel Wanga of Navaholo, and Silas Amani of Shinyalo. So these are just some of those members that have been awarded direct tickets. But also what is really coming out in respect to this direct ticketing is that they have given this to areas where they only have single candidates in that area. But again, when it comes to the question of nominations, it's clearly not one of those easy exercises to do, especially when it comes to in terms of resources, both financial as well as human resources. And this is particularly even just for bigger or larger parties. Take case in point for parties that enjoy popularity in perhaps, let's say, like, 40 out of the 47 counties that exist. Then it just means that this party has to obviously ensure that they get ballot papers, which again is not cheap. I think one goes for about 30 or 40 shillings, because it's one of those very peculiar kind of ballot papers. It needs to have a watermark, it needs to have serial numbers, needs to have non-photocopied features that cannot be photocopied. So clearly not one of those easy tasks, and this means that in every of this county they have to print these ballot papers. And again, look at parties that perhaps have over 5,000 aspirants, 6,000, perhaps even more of that. It means that again they also have to print each of that. And again, looking at the seats, from the civic seats, that is from the seats of MCAs to MPs to senator to governors. So this is partly what informs the direct ticketing. And again, also we'll be seeing a lot of this playing out in most of these parties. Negotiation democracy will clearly also be taking place, as well as that question of consensus, because again, also what good number of parties are saying is that instead of beating and pitting amongst ourselves, how about we just decide on one candidate who is perhaps popular in an area, and then we go meet at the ballot. But again, also part of what really informs this direct ticketing, because like I said, we'll be seeing this a lot, is also the question of zoning. I mean, we have seen this, and also in most outfits that have a good number of parties. Take like a case in point, Azimio Coalition, which has over 20 parties, say that a singular party enjoys popularity in a certain region, then it just means that there'll be an agreement of this party to field a candidate there, as opposed to having going through the entire nomination process. And I think I just want to bring you on board on this one, Victor, because there's really quite a lot we can say in respect to this. But again, the question that begs, and particularly on most of Kenyans' mind, is that even as these are the factors that can be considered, where does this leave the will of the people?
The will of the people?
Well, the will of the people sometimes goes back to the political parties, because, for example, when you take a case in point of Homa Bay County, they've given that direct ticket to, allegedly given to Gladys Wanga. Homa Bay County has 8 constituencies, and it's split. Now, when you look at the number of voters from each of the constituencies, they will present a particular voting pattern. Now, The will of the people will come into play, for example, when they go for an election. But you see, the party will have to look at the issues, for example, the ones you've raised, the popularity of the candidate, where we have got a single candidate. In Western Kenya, they have given those direct tickets to strong candidates from who've defected from different parties. Now, it is now the responsibility of the party to explain to the mwananchi, as you put it, the electorate, that this is the situation. For example, if I'm a strong candidate and you want to expose me, or you want to push me for a nomination, and you have another candidate from a different party, most likely that I may lose or I'll win, but the margin will not be as high as expected.
But again, Victor, let me just cut you short on that one. If you're a strong candidate, why wouldn't you be exposed to nominations and the primaries? I mean, you're already strong in that respect.
That's the thing. That's why the party, actually, they save, if you ask me, they save, number one, money, resources, ballot papers, time, so that they can concentrate on other constituencies. But then there's that issue of direct nomination, universal suffrage. We have got consensus, and so on, and sort of etc., so to speak. But then now, when it comes to direct nomination, it's allowed in the party structure. The only places, for example, they can have consensus, like in Kwale, the DP had a consensus from with all the different candidates there, and they decided who they're going to give that ticket to. Now, when they go there, ODM or so to speak, Azimio will also have a consensus on who they are going to give that party to. If this party has given their candidate a direct ticket, why do you have to subject the other party, the other candidate, to a nomination? Give him that direct ticket so that they can square it, ukombele, together.
These are the exceptions that usually come in. You see the way in the English language, you can write this way, except. This word can be used except in certain situations.
Exactly.
And even in the, considering just looking at the household spaces, looking at the parents, yes, they have the goodwill of all the children, but there are certain areas that require direct nomination.
Are you know?
Free will is not always as freely, willingly given out. I think it's the accept that comes with this political journey that aspirants choose to go by. It's not always going to be rosy, and that's also a situation that ODM party is actually facing. They've actually called it the litmus test for ODM over its nomination process ahead of the general elections. There's so many divisions that are already emerging due to the nomination of its candidates, even as it insists that the only way forward to curb defection will be conducting credible, transparent, democratic, and fair primaries. So fair is what will be tested.
It's going to be chaotic. I can assure you that it's going to be chaotic.
Yes.
You know the black men in black?
Fairness is what will be tested.
Nominations in a vita. There you have it.
All right, so that brings us to a close of this segment. That's just what the papers had for us today. But we have so much more lined up for you. We want to take a very quick breather, but we'll be back to continue with today's programming. Do stay with us.